Hello and welcome to Who Wore It Better, where I review Raw and Smackdown back to back and try and figure out which show won for the week. This has been a really wild last few days, not just in terms of the in-ring stuff, but also all the backstage, off-camera things that have been going on in the company. It's been a really wild, 4 or 5 days, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But first, Braun Strowman opens Raw with a promo saying he's going to be the next Universal Champion after the Rumble. Then out comes Kurt Angle with a bunch of local wrestlers dressed as security guards, and he fires Strowman in the ring over what happened last week with the grappling hook pulling down the big steel beams onto Lesnar and Kane. Now, I know I am by far the first person who's made this point, but the fact that Roman Reigns committed vehicular assault and damn near killed Braun Strowman a couple of months ago after the ambulance match, and got no punishment for it. In fact, I think he got a title shot right after that. Meanwhile, Strowman gets fired for doing something roughly similar in that kind of same vein is a little ridiculous. Then the Strowmaning begins as Braun is being escorted outside by the security guards. He turns around, beats all of them up, and says, "Everyone's going to be taking these hands." And the rampage has just begun. More on that later. In a rematch from last week, we have the Bar taking on Titus Worldwide. Of course, last week, the unthinkable happened as Apollo and Titus beat Cesaro and Sheamus clean in the middle of the ring, so we'll see if lightning can strike twice. Now, this is actually a pretty entertaining match. I never thought I'd say this, but Apollo and Titus are actually getting over, at least with me, and definitely with the crowd here in Texas on this night. I don't know if the addition of Dana Brooke in the equation is making them a little more popular. I will say, I've said this before, she may not be the best wrestler in the world, but in terms of personality and expression, and emotions, I think Dana Brooke is really one of the best talents right now, best female talents, male or female for that matter, on the Raw brand. The match ends when Jason Jordan comes out with his music. He distracts Cesaro and Sheamus. That allows Apollo to roll Sheamus up, and they win yet again. So at this point, 2 wins in a row, I'd almost think, well, if they're not going to be challenged for the belts right after the Rumble, they really should be inserted into the tag title match at the pay-per-view. Then after the match, we have Seth Rollins confronting Jason Jordan, his tag team championship partner, on the stage, basically thinking that Jordan went way over the line with what he did there, but Jason Jordan doesn't see it. Oh, those two crazy kids just can't get along. But then the Strowmaning part 2, because we see Strowman backstage. He destroys Kurt Angle's office. He throws the chair and destroys the TV. He just ransacks the whole place. Then after commercial break, he storms catering. He ransacks the place. He beats up Kurt Hawkins. He grabs a piece of chocolate cake and he eats it. Very rarely in the history of wrestling do you see a cake being presented on TV and someone's not wearing it by the end of the night. But that was a pretty entertaining segment. Just the catering part was great. Just the look in the guy's face holding the cake, frozen with fear as Strowman grabs the cake and walks off. Cruiserweight time as Tony Nese with Enzo in his corner takes on Cedric Alexander with Goldust in his corner. As the match is in progress, we see the Strowmaning part 4 as Braun is just tearing up shit backstage. I'm loving this overarching storyline they're doing with Braun right now, and it's the fact that it's interrupting things in progress. I love that. I love the spontaneity, the feeling of spontaneity you get with that kind of stuff. It's a very athletic match here. Nese loses to Cedric with thanks to the lumbar check. There is one point earlier in the match I do enjoy where Enzo's barking commands at Tony and talking trash to Cedric. Then Goldust kind of sneaks up behind him, does the Enzo dance and freaks him out there. Goldust being involved with the Cruiserweight stuff right now, it doesn't make sense, but it does. I think that Goldust can really help kind of lend a little bit of star power and veteran savvy to the Cruiserweight division, even though I don't think he technically qualifies. I know he's lost a lot of weight, but I don't think he's 205 or under just yet. The Strowmaning continues as Braun is raising hell in the production truck, which is pretty cool. Not very often you see the inside of the truck during an episode of Raw or Smackdown, so that's kind of a cool rare treat. Even more rare, a Kevin Dunn sighting. Cool to see that there. Then Braun separates the truck from the production trailer, and then he flips the semi-truck over with about 18 dozen gratuitous camera shots. They had at least 5 different angles on that thing, and they couldn't decide on one of them. That was the one thing that kind of took it away from me, how cool this moment was. At most, you only needed 2 camera angles for that, and they had a ton of them, and they were all just half a second on there, half a second off. Braun makes his way to the stage in the announce area. You see the announcers get him to leave, and then Booker basically just shoves Cole into harm's way. So Strowman is manhandling Cole at this point. Kurt Angle comes out and says, "Stephanie McMahon called me." That's what he said. Stephanie McMahon called him and said that Strowman is no longer fired, back in the championship match at the Rumble. And so he puts down Michael Cole for a second, but then he grabs him again, and he takes the safest bump in the world as he's tossed into a bunch of security guards on the floor area. So basically kind of crowd surfing for a second. So yeah, that was pretty much it. And holy crap, what a thrilling, exhilarating hour plus that was with Strowman on Monday. We haven't seen this kind of chaos since, it reminds me a lot of like when Kane, I forget what episode this was specifically, but I think it was like 98 or 99, Kane just like raising hell every set, just interrupting every match with choke slams and tombstones, and then Austin doing something very similar as well in that time period, like just interrupting every match, stunner, stunner, stunner. But that was a crazy bunch of TV, and it really is cool to see how much time and effort, and especially money, they're putting into just this one-night story arc of Strowman just destroying everything. So if he wasn't already a star before this, Strowman is definitely an STAR star after Monday night. This put the exclamation point on it, and it seems that the company agrees with what a lot of the fan base is saying. Now, the big question is, are they going to put the title on him at the Rumble? I mean, sadly, I doubt it, which would be insane given the amount of build they're putting into Strowman, especially on this night. So Cole takes like the safest, softest bump he's ever taken in his brief history of bump taking in WWE, and so he's out for the rest of the night though. He's gone. He's too shaken up. So Tom Phillips comes in and takes his place for the rest of the night, just in time for Nia Jax versus Asuka, which on paper is a very good match. We saw that before at NXT TakeOver a year or two ago, and so I think they've only grown since then, so on paper, could be a very good match. It's definitely speed versus strength here. At one point, Nia hits this stiff-looking powerbomb onto Asuka. Then later on, you see Asuka working Nia's leg. At one point, they're on the outside, and Asuka kicks Nia's leg out from under her leg. She gets like caught in the steel steps, and then she barely climbs back in to avoid the 10 count, and she's like, she looks to be in very visible like agony and pain over the leg, and she can't even get back up with the leg. Her knee buckles and stuff. The referee stops the match, and I'm pretty sure that was a worked injury. The way she like got hurt on the outside makes it think it was not like a real thing. Like, it's weird how similar this was to me to seeing like the way like Big Cass got hurt last year with his knee. He took a big spill on the outside, tried to get back in the ring, he tears his ACL. And this one, while not blocked the exact same way, it just kind of reminded me of that. So I think it's kind of weird that this would be a worked injury. It is interesting way to end this match because neither woman has to lose, so both technically look strong going into the Rumble match. But the big thing is, if you were going to have the match end this way, then why bother having them fight here at all? Why would you like give this match away early? Then backstage, Jason Jordan talks Kurt Angle into making a match between Seth Rollins and Finn Balor. Ooh, Jason is being so sneaky in such a way. Also, there's this rumor that apparently Jason Jordan is working with an injury, this unknown, undisclosed injury. There's no details about it. Jason Jordan's injured, so that's why he didn't wrestle like on Raw. But really, what is there to that? Like, I haven't seen any kind of confirmation about it, and there's no real details on it, so I won't comment on it one way or the other. Up next, the Revival versus Aaron Solo and Ricky Starks. Hey, haven't seen these guys in a minute. It's a squiggity squash match, and look at that, the Revival are still in one piece by the end of the night. No injuries to report here. So those jobber guys lost, but in Aaron Solo's case, he is still married to Bayley, so at least he's got that going for him. So after the match, Dash and Dawson let you know they don't like Instagram or those video games. They don't like the attitude era. They're not sports entertainers, they're wrestlers. And something tells me that next week on Raw 25, they're going to have that role of like Rob Conway or Heath Slater, where they're just going to show up and just get the hell beat out of them by a bunch of legends at once. Elias introduces The Miz and The Miztourage for this next matchup here, and in his song, he references John Cena at the Rumble. So I guess now with Samoa Joe out of action, it looks like Elias is the next man up to be doing some kind of program with Cena come Rumble time. So the next match is Roman Reigns versus Bo and Curtis in a handicap match. Miz occasionally meddles at ringside, but the big dog wins with a spear on Axel, so he's riding a wave of momentum going into next week's big anniversary show, defending the IC title against The Miz, which based on their actions and what they did in the first title match they had a few weeks ago, or several weeks ago in fact, I'm actually looking forward to this rematch. Up next, Sasha Banks versus Sonja Deville, but before I talk about that, I do want to touch briefly on the news that broke over the weekend that Paige's in-ring career may very well be over after re-aggravating her neck injury in this house match that happened a couple of weeks ago, and Sasha Banks like kicked her in the corner and like her neck snapped back and she was out for a while. It's very sad if this is true and if this is confirmed that she's really done in WWE. I mean, you can hold out hope and optimism that in a few years, she might come back to wrestle either there or somewhere else outside of the company. If she does get better and doctors allow it, then yes, by all means, let her do it. But for right now, it is very sad news to see this happening. As someone as young as she is at 25, yeah, she did start wrestling a long time ago, but she's still very young and has a lot of years ahead of her. So for things to be cut short like this, especially after coming back from so much adversity over the last year and a half, I mentioned this before when she first came back. back, you know, having to deal with her previous neck injury and the suspensions and all the madness with Alberto Del Rio. And now she finally comes back. She gets into a big program. She's going to be in the Women's Rumble match, and now it's just kind of out. It's gone. She's not going to be in the Rumble match, and she may never wrestle again, at least not in that company. You know, I've seen a lot of people ragging on Sasha Banks a little too much for my taste. I don't think it's fair for Sasha to get all this anger and vitriol over what happened in that match because, you know, I don't think it's fair. I think it's wrestling. You know, it's a tough physical endeavor. Injuries happen, and you know, nobody ever wants to see this happen. I think it's just kind of an accidental thing. You know, same thing with Seth Rollins after he injured John Cena and Sting, or Samoa Joe with Tyson Kidd. It's just one of those things where, you know, these are guys with usually pretty solid track records, and then these unfortunate incidents happen, and now there's, oh, this person's reckless, or oh, this person should be vilified for what they did. You know, it sucks, and I think those people have to live with what they've done in the ring. But again, it's wrestling, and it ain't ballet, as Jim Ross has famously said. And it's just one of those things where, you know, accidents happen, injuries happen. Some are severe, some are not. And you count your blessings for the ones that aren't very severe, but that's just the nature of the business. And at the time it took me to talk about all of that, this match was pretty much over. Deville beat Sasha clean as a whistle after kicking her from a mid-air attack, and that's pretty much it. So yeah, I was kind of surprised how short this match was. Woken Matt Hardy takes on Heath Slater. It is a slightly more competitive match than Matt's match last week with Kurt Hawkins, and we're getting to see more of that Heath Slater Rhino storyline on display, where Rhino's trying to toughen Heath up. I'm just curious when or if they'll ever pull the trigger and do the blow off to that angle. Anyway, Matt wins with the twist of fate. They announced Monday that Goldberg will be headlining the Hall of Fame this year, and, you know, Goldberg is a very polarizing figure. You know, some fans love him, some fans hate him. I think, you know, Goldberg, yeah, he's not the best wrestler in the world, not the best talker in the world, but despite that, he just had this mystique and this aura about him, especially in his prime. He had such a charisma about him that, you know, even some of the most esteemed, tenured veterans in wrestling could never match, and Goldberg just had that very quickly in his career. Of course, he had the ungodly push in WCW, being a dominant world champion, plenty of historic wins and moments both in WCW and in WWE. Even though that first run of the company was kind of abysmal, he did all right for himself there as well in the long run. You like him or not, he is one of the biggest names in the business for the last 20 years or so, so I think he absolutely belongs there. Main event time with Seth Rollins versus Finn Balor. It's a good match, though I will say the one nitpick I have is I am getting sick of the formula of Seth selling his knee all the time. Then his big comeback is predicated entirely on moves where he uses his legs. Either he's like posting off his knees or he's using his legs in some kind of attack. You know, people rag on John Cena for years for his selective selling, and this to me is no different. There is a very controversial not 3 count where, you know, Seth goes with the frog splash, Balor puts the knees up and he covers him, and, you know, when I first saw it, I thought the referee, like, the first hand going to the mat was him like getting in position, then he does the 2 count and Rollins kicks out. But really, like, when they show the replay, it really shows that Seth like botched kicking out. Like, he was like 3.5 by the time he finally kicked out. So it was a weird call. You know, that kind of happens in the heat of the moment. It's one of those things where, you know, those things can, you know, they can be prevented, but in the heat of the moment, you just gotta keep going with it, basically. The match ends when Sheamus and Cesaro come out. They interrupt. There's a big brawl on the outside. The referee's distracted. Jordan trips Balor. Seth hits the curb stomp. Whoa, the curb stomp is back, and Seth Rollins wins the match. So after the match is over and Rollins and Jordan go back up the ramp, we just hang on Balor and Gallows and Anderson for what feels like a super long time before they fade to black, which makes you think, are they just like foreshadowing to something? Are they just like stretching for time? I didn't get what that was about. But anyway, the big story is the curb stomp is back, which is great. I'm glad they brought it back, because the whole reason they banned it allegedly was because, oh, it's too easy for kids to replicate at home. But like, this is like, literally in wrestling, every move is easy to replicate, except for the big flying moves and the flips. Like, almost every move in wrestling can be done by dumb kids at home. The curb stomp is in no way the most dangerous of the moves you can do at home that you see on TV. I mean, I thought it was silly that they banned it. I'm glad it's back. It's certainly a more exciting and interesting finisher than the knee. Smackdown begins with a match, crazy concept. It's for the U.S. title tournament, a semifinal match. Xavier Woods and Jinder Mahal. Very entertaining pre-match promo by Xavier and the New Day. And did my eyes deceive me, or did I see a new pancake-themed Bootios box when they were doing their intro? Maybe some new item for me to do a taste test on in the future. Anyway, it's a good lengthy match here. This match got 2 commercial breaks. That's how long this match was. At one point, Jinder gets his comeback at the very end after he gets out of the way of the Xavier with his elbow drop. He picks up Xavier and he goes to toss him like into the ropes or out of the ring, but Xavier just takes it all in its like head and neck area. Very similar to like how Enzo got hurt a year or 2 ago in the ropes with that. So yeah, kind of a scary moment there. I mean, I don't know if that was a work or not, because like if they can do it safely, that could actually be a pretty devastating move. Like it looks sick. It can get great heat with doing something like that, like really looking like you're hurting somebody. But if that was a botch, bad Jinder. Don't do that anymore. But yeah, apparently Xavier was in good enough condition to take the Colossus to end the match. So yeah, Jinder goes on to the finals. We get an AJ Styles interview backstage where he makes fun of Kevin Owens' weight and calls Kevin and Sammy Cammy. Not his best work. After a neat little video package that shows the women of SmackDown talking about their Rumble match, we go to the final semifinal match of the U.S. title tournament, Bobby Roode and Mojo Rawley. It's Mojo's first big non-Zack Ryder related test since his heel turn. I think he did pretty well here. It was a pretty good match. Rawley showing a lot of his aggression again. Ultimately, his overconfidence was his undoing because on 2 separate occasions, he would go for a corner attack, one of them being his finisher, and he totally whiffs it, and Bobby counters it with the glorious DDT at the end to win the match. Then the Singh brothers come in after the match and beat up Bobby Roode for a minute. They run right back out and they powder, and you can see Samir actually hurts his leg somehow on the landing, because you can see Sunil carrying him back up the ramp after they make good their escape there. So Jinder comes out, talks some smack on the stage and says next week we're going to fight. Then Bobby Roode says let's have the match tonight, and Jinder balks at first. Then Daniel Bryan comes out and makes the match official for later. So that's kind of nice, because I think it was announced either today or yesterday they were going to bump the U.S. title tournament finals to the go-home week before Rumble, so the next week, not the Rumble itself, and now they're doing it on tonight, so that's kind of cool. Oh boy, another 6-woman tag team match on SmackDown? Be still my beating heart. It's the Riot Squad versus Charlotte, Naomi, and Becky Lynch. The Riot Squad wins when Ruby hits Naomi on the outside with a kick. That follows up with Sarah Logan with I think kind of a codebreaker move on Naomi to win the match. There you go. I'm sick of seeing these 6-woman tags. Backstage in the middle of a promo, the Usos got jumped from behind by Benjables. Also, by the way, Jay got arrested Tuesday morning for a DWI, so that sucks for him. Main event time is the tournament finals to determine the new U.S. champion as Bobby Roode takes on Jinder Mahal. Shane McMahon and Daniel Bryan are at ringside to present the belt to the eventual winner. The Singh brothers are barred from ringside, and I wonder how much that had to do with the fact that Samir seemed to mess his knee up on that landing on the outside earlier in the night after he powdered out of the ring. It is another solid match on the show. Good story being told of Roode's like core and his rib area being worked over for the bulk of this match. He is able to persevere. He counters the Colossus with a glorious DDT to win the match, and he is your new United States champion. And for once, Shane and Daniel don't argue over anything as they present the belt to him. It'd be funny if they did like a tug of war over the belt before they handed it to Bobby or something, just to continue their seeds of dissent being there, but it was not meant to be. It was good for Roode to become the champion, but I wonder if it would have meant more if he had beat Baron Corbin for it at Clash of Champions instead of having to go through this whole rigmarole of a tournament, because, that was who he was feuding with at the time. And so I think it would have meant more if he had beaten his rival at the time instead of going through this tournament. It was a good tournament, and I think it was cool to see Xavier Woods shine for a bit as a singles guy. Bumping the finals up to this week instead of the Rumble or a week before the Rumble, I think was kind of cool because it makes things more unpredictable and spontaneous feeling. But yeah, there's a difference between rushing things and having Roode win the belt at Clash of Champions and capitalizing on the right moment, which I think would have been Roode winning at Clash of Champions. Time now for me to decide which show won for the week, Raw or SmackDown. This week, I have to go once again with the red show, Raw, and that's on for one reason and one reason only, and that's the STROWMANING. Braun Strowman's absolute reign of terror and path of destruction was one of the most entertaining things I've seen across both shows in quite some time. It was awesome. Like I said earlier, a star-making night for Braun Strowman on Monday. The way he was just destroying everything and everyone. Yes, we've seen him flip an ambulance before, but for him to do the production truck on top of everything else he did on that night was truly something to behold. I even enjoyed the Bar versus Titus Worldwide match. Seth and Finn was great, if only for the return of the curb stomp. I will say that Nia versus Asuka was a curiously booked match. If they were going to have the match end the way it did, then why bother giving that match away right now? SmackDown, I did enjoy the U.S. title tournament overarching storyline. Very cool. Pretty much the entire episode was dedicated to the tournament. The only non-tournament match was the only con of the show, and that was another repetitive 6-woman tag team match. But beyond that, I thought that the tournament was solid. But I think SmackDown was a solid show overall. But really, ultimately, nothing was that memorable, and nothing we hadn't really seen before. before. Cool to see Bobby Roode win the title, although I think that the moment was lost because it should have happened at Clash of Champions, in my opinion. Let me know what you guys thought about Raw and SmackDown this week in the comments section, and be sure to vote which show you thought was better in the gimmick in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Be sure to thumbs up this video if you like it, subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, buy the t-shirts at ProWrestlingTees.com, and check out Patreon.com/WrestlingWithRegret for exclusive perks and some bonus content, including my DDP yoga journey. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.